Trump. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Good morning. It is the 10th day of December. It is a Monday, and we are together again on this edition of Heart of America. And then there is that, where we take a look at what happened the previous week, over the weekend, and project into the coming week, which is going to be remarkably easy to do, considering the fact that many of the stories from last week were the same stories from the week before that, and certainly will be in probably the coming days as well. Some of the things that we're going to be looking forward to is, the shakeups at the Trump White House. The Attorney General has been nominated, as has the ambassador to the United Nations. We're going to get into that a little bit later on. More on Michael Cohen, perhaps a little bit more on the caravan, as that continues to get quite ugly at the border, as well as some interesting comments from our favorite Democratic socialist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as well as your calls at 929-477-3761. That's 929-477-3761. Also, very quickly, we want to let you know that the book Unknown America is finally up on, as a Kindle app. So you can go over to Amazon, or you can just go to theunknownamerica.com, click on the link. It says you've got multiple ways to buy the book now. And so you click on the Kindle link towards the bottom of the page under the graphic of the book. Been a brisk little seller this Christmas season, and also a new good friend of the program, Gary Allen, who does a program out of Houston, had us on last evening. We had planned on going for about 15, 20 minutes or so, and ended up going closer to 40. And so that's just the kind of stuff that's contained in the book. And for those of you that have picked it up, we know that it's got some good stuff in it. I mean, I can say that because it's history. All I do is collect it and give my slant on it, or my views on it, or my particular idiom, if you will. So go check out the Kindle version at theunknownamerica.com. Over the course of the last several days, we have been hearing about, of course, Nikki Haley announced her leaving as the ambassador to the United Nations. Of course, we heard, earlier, we knew the Sessions would be fired after the midterms. That's something I predicted well before the midterms ever occurred. Of course, there's been some other shakeups, and these things, historically speaking, are not unusual. But to give us a little bit of an insight as how quickly all this has come, we've got strategist Ned Ryan had weighed in on the issue as to who some of the likely contenders are going to be, what's going on with John Kelly. John Kelly's, he's going to step down, and then presumably one of Mike Pence's staffers, a guy by the name of Nick Ayers, was going to be leading the field of nominees. Now, Nick Ayers has said that he will be leaving at the end of the year. So how deep are all these? And again, historically speaking, and by the way, Ryan points out some things a lot of folks might not have realized from the Obama administration. So while the national news media continues to belabor the fact that Trump's having these turnovers, they act as if historically these things have never occurred. And before I play the audio about Ned Ryan, I want to kind of go back to last evening when I had this conversation with Gary Allen on his program, which airs on Sunday nights, obviously, because yesterday was, well, never mind, you get it. It's interesting when you are a guest on a program as opposed to being the host, and the host is interviewing you, and typically when you're interviewing somebody, you are pulling information out of that person for the purpose of entertaining and informing the audience. And every once in a while, and it's relatively rare, But every once in a while, the guest, the interviewee, and the host of the program will forget that there's an audience. I know this gets a little bit complex, but just kind of hang with me for a second. In that moment, it shifts from an interview to a conversation. And the reason that's relevant is that interviews tend to be, I'll say, formal or structured. There's a beginning and an end. There's an intended result. There's a map or a pathway that you're taking to get from point A to, in this case, point Z and off the air. And that typically takes the form of questions or topics or subjects, whatever the case may be. But every once in a while, the interview becomes so engaging that the host and the interviewee morph into a conversation. That happened last evening, which is probably why it went more long form, because quite frankly, the stuff contained in this book is fascinating as all living heck. During the course of this conversation, he was pointing out how remarkably lost people really are in this country to the process. And the fact that there are so many historical anomalies that are just taken at face value that craft the entire narrative of people's viewpoints. I know that you have heard me say that 100 times, particularly if you've been with us the last 10 plus years. But to hear somebody else say it was kind of odd because people are beginning to understand that. Now, a lot of you that are listening in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, are not privy to the fact that I do a TV program here on Alabama Cable Network on Thursday evening with a good friend and host himself, Joe Lockett. Something like that. The conversational interview happened last Thursday on his program talking about the protest in Birmingham. There were several historical points that I made that people challenged me on. But the neat thing about history is I don't have to defend it. It just is what it is. And anything that I talked about, from the racial strife in the past to the way it was dealt with, the people's personalities, this is all researched and documented and beyond contestation. But then enter this whole group of people that are arguing me and arguing the points of what the protesters want without understanding the historical significance of what has happened in the past that may indicate the protesters are a little misguided in this particular case, or that their efforts will not be as successful as they'd hope, and here's the reason why from a historical perspective. So that's one example of what Gary and I were talking about and how people have this false narrative. Now, with that said, enter in Alexandria Cortez. And I read a very interesting article over the weekend, and I wish I could find the darn thing. It was one of those that I read through it and went, wow, that's really, really good. And I've been kind of just ruminating on it over the course of the last several days. And that is that Alexandria Cortez is much more threatening, not necessarily to the country, which, she is, but to the Republican Party. And it's not so much of her policies. And believe it or not, there's a silver line or a bow that's going to go on top of this. So hang tight. I'm going to bring this all the way back around to Trump's turnovers. But the point is that you've got all these people out there that are completely just wrong about a lot of things as it relates to this country. And that's oftentimes perpetrated by, I'll say, it could be a complicit media, but oftentimes it's a just incompetent media. So anyway, the author's making the point that the things that projected Alexandria Cortez may very well be the exact same things that propelled Trump. In other words, a base of people that you couldn't argue away a lot of the most ardent Trump supporters if you wanted to. The comment he made about killing somebody in the street, he believes that, and so do a lot of Trump supporters. I find it a little bit imbecilish, but that's my opinion. But the point is that Cortez has something that a lot of other politicians does not. And that is what the author pointed out was relatability. Now she's come out over the weekend and made some idiotic green comments, and then she's made some comments about fossil fuels, and she's paying interns that are supposed to be not paid, paying them $15 an hour, and it just gets weirder and weirder. It gets more Cortez by the moment, right? But the author's making the point that the voters in this country, they don't understand the real deep stuff. You know, it's like Joe and I were talking the other day prior to his show, Outspoken, that, you know, talking about things like Robert Mueller and you know, Michael Cohen and the Russian probe. Because you're listening to this program, you're probably some form of a news junkie, as am I. I mean, there are those of us that are out there. But the overwhelming majority of the people in this country don't give two shakes about the majority of what they hear on conservative or liberal radio. They tend to either be in the middle or they are just politically they are just completely unplugged. And so this is one of the reasons why this author is concerned about Alexandria Cortez, because people are not going to vote for her based upon policies that work. They are going to vote for her on the most emotional stuff that touches the heartstrings. You know, it's kind of like, you know, Bill Clinton was so relatable because, you know, he drank beer and chased skirt. I mean, I guess that's the way you'd want to put that. But you have this relatability in our politicians, because at the end of the day, most of the people coming out that are voting these days are doing so because of the narrative that's crafted for them, and the press is not supporting them in their policy efforts as much as making them more relatable. Who doesn't want $15 an hour? Who doesn't want greener plants on the planet? You know, who doesn't want free Medicare and free college for all? All these things sound good. They all sound appealing. Those of us with an IQ above that of a trash can lid know they can't work, but that doesn't matter because most people don't care if they work or not. They sound good. That's one of the reasons why, you know, people for many, many, many years have been talking about campaign ads and how negative campaign ads are, and how when they do these polls, and should we do away with negative campaign ads? Everybody says yes, it's enough of the vitriol, enough of the diatribes and the divisiveness. Let's do away with negative campaigning all the way around. But then again, the marketers never do. Why? Because it works. We had negative campaign ads all the way back into the early 1800s. Lincoln was oftentimes portrayed as a chimpanzee and a buffoon. All throughout history, we've had negative campaign ads because as terrible as they are, it's the negativity of them that sticks in our minds. Because, again, the overwhelming portion, the majority of voters, don't pay any attention to the policy. They don't pay any attention to the program or the law or the bill. Now, I realize if you go over to your Fox News app today, you'll see there's another Trump story dealing with Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. At least it was up a few moments ago. You think I'm kidding about this? Go out today, and I used to do this all the time on the terrestrial signal. Ask 10 people, what do you think about Michael Cohen? You're not going to get 9 answers. Now, in your circle of friends, your closest, tightest friends, because people tend to conglomerate with people, with people that they're most like and are like them. But ask the average guy on the street. You can do this. You don't have to wait for Jesse Waters to do it for you. Act like you're in the media. Pull your cell phone out. Hold it up. Get a camera out. Facebook Live. It'll be funny. But that's one of the reasons why, coming all the way back around, Donald Trump's now having these shakeups at the White House. The average American Yahoo doesn't understand that that's pretty darn typical. The average life expectancy from a White House position is 12 to 18 months. We're right in the 18th month range, over that even. So it's very important to realize that what the media is propagating as this big internal dust-up is nothing more than political normalcy. But then again, going back to people that are going to elect an Alexandria Cortez based on her relatability, they're not going to buy that. They're not going to see that. And it continues to fuel the narrative predicated on people's own lack of ignorance. So Ned Ryan chimes in an interview that was done yesterday, or I think it was Friday morning, and just gives us a little bit of an idea of what's going on in some of the changes. Check this out. Then we're going to take a quick break. Phones are open also at 929-477-3761. But before I do this, I really want to be quite adamant about this. Oh, and by the way, really pandering statement here. I don't care if you bring people to this program, but bring people to somebody's church. And I mean the churches of the painful truth. Because what I mean by that is, folks, there's a lot of people out there that are that uneducated about the facts. Doesn't mean they're stupid people. They just don't care. They don't see the need to care. And I've said this many times before. If you hear a sermon at church, or you hear some of the gospel, or somebody reveals the truth, where you have a cathartic moment or an epiphany that might be life-changing to you, and you keep it to yourself, you've robbed the rest of the world of that. And it's very important to realize that. If you want to bring people to Heart of America and have them check out this program, or the regular Michael Hart show, or Unknown America, or our situational security programs that we're doing every Friday, gotten some great feedback on both of those specialty programs, then do it. You know, we want you to come and hang out with us and be part of this army. But if you leave what you hear here, then you've robbed people of the ability to make some good, wise decisions. And ultimately, that is what is missing in this country. Before I did the Lockett show this past Thursday, people kept calling the program and on Facebook Live and asking, Joe, ask Hart what we should do, or this conversation kept going back and forth of, what should the white community do as it relates to black killings? And by the way, a lot of white people die from police as well. Don't get me started on that. But the point is that we need to have solutions. We need to do something. No, you know what needs to happen before there's ever a solution, before there's ever a protest, before there's ever a resolution, before somebody comes up with an idea? There needs to be a protection and an advancement of the truth. The truth matters, and we don't get it in this country. We get somebody's version of it. We get the media over here, and then you have jackaloons like Alex Jones that takes a kernel of truth and molds it into something more than it is for the purposes of selling you harvest seeds, or something that's going to purify your water when the Russians come to take the Chinese guns from the Italians that are going to be attacking the Canadians next week. Everybody has got something to sell. And so do I. And what I'm trying to sell here is the truth. And the truth, just like salvation, is absolutely free if you are willing and courageous enough to accept it. But if you hear the truth here, and don't take my word for it, vet it out for yourselves. If you hear the truth here and you leave it here, then that is going to be one of the biggest disservices that we can ever perpetrate on this nation. Because the overwhelming majority of problems that we have, whether they be dealing with racism, protests, Alexandria Cortez, or the recent revelations that there's a turnover in the White House, some of the biggest problems that we seem to have in this country is people's complete lack of understanding and the reality of the world around them. And that is something that we, as a community of patriots, have the ability to overcome if we will only make the effort. Check out Ned Ryan.
The thing that's interesting, again, the media wants to make every little change in the Trump White House, out to be the apocalypse. And the fact of the matter is that in every administration and every White House, there's staff turnover. I mean, as we're talking about the chief of staff position, Carly, Obama had 3 chiefs of staff in his first 3 years, so there's nothing unusual about John Kelly leaving. In fact, he made it to about the right mark. Most senior White House staff last 12 to 18 months, and by the time he's done, John Kelly will have been there 18 months. I think he's done an admirable job. Let's not forget, in the summer of 2017, that while there's always a certain amount of chaos in the White House, it seemed like it was right on the edges of just being a little out of control. So he's done a very good job, and I think it's a great time. Let's not forget, when we go into 2019, Democrats are going to unleash a massive amount of investigations. There's going to be a lot going on, bring in new blood, bring in fresh energy. So I'm excited. I've seen Mark Meadows' name mentioned as a potential chief of staff. I would love that idea.
Okay, let's move on to Army General Mark Milley as the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs. What do you think about that pick?
Great pick. I don't know as much about him, to be honest, Rob. I think it'll be a solid pick. I've had no trouble with the picks that Trump has made. He's got a lot of good people advising him that have known some of these things, so I would say it's probably a good pick.
Militarily, he seems to make really good decisions, yeah.
And the big news last week, William Barr replacing Jeff Sessions, Heather Nauert replacing Nikki Haley. Both have received some criticism for some things, lack of experience for Heather Nauert, and William Barr might face an uphill battle because of his sort of criticism of the Mueller investigation. How do you think those nominations are going to pan out?
Well, first of all, let's not forget, obviously, Republicans added a couple more votes in the Senate. It's going to help with the confirmation fight. The ironic thing about Bill Barr is that in 1991, he was unanimously confirmed by a Democratic-controlled Senate. I'm pretty sure we're not going to see that happen again. Let's not forget, he oversaw 2 independent counsels, and he has been critical of independent counsels. He's also approved of Comey's firing by Trump. So I think there's going to be some Democratic opposition, but I don't see any problems with him being confirmed.
The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
It's the Michael Hart Show.
Come again?
The Michael Hart Show.
You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please.
A liberal dose of conservatism.
How'd you do that? I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
The audio from Ryan, and just kind of give you a little bit of historical background, is that the fact that, these things happen all the time in terms of the turnover, and then there's that, because people are constantly being fed this diet of disinformation about the way politics runs and about the turnover. And the funny thing is that in terrestrial radio, we saw this happen all the time, and you guys know it, particularly the long-term listeners. We can sit there and give some of the most die-hard information about the inner machinations of this country, and, I don't know, we get a call or two. And then we talk about, we had a program, 4 or 5 months ago, where we must have had 100 people call the show about the most appropriate way to clean a cast iron skillet. I have never ceased to be amazed at what makes something ring, what makes a story hot, and what people seem to completely tune out to. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about in the news cycle today, from the changes at the White House to the caravan to Michael Cohen, and a whole lot more for that matter. But the reason I'm bringing up the iron skillet is that whenever we do a broadcast a day or so later, within 24 hours, because we're doing it online, unlike in terrestrial radio, where you can only estimate the number of people that might be listening at any given time, in this case, we know. And the thing that is so fascinating to me is that the more compelling, deep, maybe even conspiratorial, or in the weeds even, the story is, the fewer the numbers are. It's the darndest thing. It's absolutely odd in so many respects, but it proves something to us, and that is that when you get very, very, very much into the really deep, weedy stuff that's out there, most people simply remove themselves from it. They want the more topical. In a lot of cases, the funnier. You know, in some cases, you know, Christmas shopping or whatever the case may be. So I have to temper what we talk about and how deep we go into it. But at the end of the day, if we're not sharing the truthfulness behind each individual story, then it's not worth sharing. It's not worth telling. There's been a lot that's been coming on the southern border as well, and the way the Border Patrol agents are responding to that. We learned over the weekend about a 19-year-old woman actually scales the border wall to give birth on the other side. Yesterday, a story came out that was showing a young man shoving his 8-month-old son under the fence. And on and on and on the narrative goes as it relates to those that are seeking asylum in this country. And so it's very important to realize that you've got to, and I'm just going to throw it out there, okay? Can we just be real with each other for a moment? Most people in the news are full of crap. They're gonna share the narrative with you that they want you to understand. And like in the case of Ned Ryan's comments, it's like life started when Obama was elected. And it's gotten a whole lot worse for those folks because they were not politically aware until Obama got elected. But I share that with you only because people need to be ever vigilant that the media is shoving things right down your throats as it relates to the probe in Russia and the Clinton Foundation. Oh, by the way, did y'all happen to hear that the Clintons... yeah. God, I love this kind of stuff. Let me just hear him savor this one for a moment. You know the Clinton tour? Bill and Hillary? Who can't even stand each other, but yet they're going to go on tour together. Yeah. They got a Groupon, y'all. They got a Groupon to go and hear their little road show. Now, if that does not embody the very ideology of and then there's that, I don't know what does. The tour is falling apart. It got suspended after or during the funeral for George H.W. Bush, and now it seems like it's deep discount, and perhaps the promoters of the event may very well even be losing their backsides because everybody is sick and tired of their because quite frankly, everybody's just sick and tired. So we've got that we need to tear down here in just a few moments. We're going to take a real quick break here for just a few moments. Let us re-up on the coffee pot. give you a couple of ideas of some of the other breaking stories from last week, the things that have continued to move along. One of the hot stories of the entire last couple of weeks was whether or not Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was racist. A couple of the animators and voiceover people have come out and said, what the hell are you talking about? They had absolutely, positively no idea. The baby, it's cold outside saga continues to unwind and unravel. A lot of people don't realize that a little bit later on in the song, after the young man is trying to coerce the young lady to stay at the house and cuddle because it's cold outside, then a little bit later on in the same song, the woman's doing the exact same thing to Red Skelton. It's just a fun little Christmas ditty about it, putting on a toddy and snowing outside and flirting. Whatever happened to the good old days when flirting was in? Well, apparently that story won't go away either as we continue to unravel and see racism at every turn. Y'all take a real quick break with me. Go and load up that coffee pot and let's listen to a couple of these folks that are helping to make this program possible. And by the way, if you'd like to join them, go over to heartofamerica.net. We would appreciate your support because we're doing, and then there's that on Mondays, the Michael Hart Show on Tuesday, Unknown America on Wednesday. Come back Thursday with the Michael Hart Show. Friday is the Situational Security Summit, and we're introducing 2 brand new podcasts at the first of the year. One that I'm looking to do is going to be related towards, or it won't be me hosting it, by the way. We're going to be doing one on the actually technology, and then another one on land, believe it or not. And so we're going to give you more information on that in coming weeks. But this is a big effort we've undertaken here. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing here on the Heart of America Radio Network, we would appreciate your support in whatever form that looks like. Stick around. We're coming right back. If you're a fan of The Michael Hart Show and are enjoying the daily commentary, interviews, and audio shorts, then please consider supporting the program financially. Creating a daily talk program takes a great deal of time and money. Although corporate sponsors are always welcome, the real support comes from people like you, the regular listeners. So if you support the Christian conservative message and values we share on this program and would like to help, please go to our website, michaelhartshow.com, and click on the orange Patreon button at the top of the page. For less than $7 a month, you can help us keep going while we spread our faith-based conservative views worldwide. So if you support our views, please consider supporting the program. Just go to www.michaelhartshow.com and click on the orange Patreon button, and thanks for your support and for listening.
It's the Michael Hart Show.
Come again?
The Michael Hart Show.
You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please.
A liberal dose of conservatism.
How'd you do that? I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Anyone can tell you the news.
We welcome Diamond and Silk.
Mark Zuckerberg will end up and it's going to be a face without the book. Book without the page.
Hey, Megan, how are you?
Now they're chipping away at the normalization of pedophilia, and the left is embracing this type of behavior.
We welcome Dinesh D'Souza.
I know I ticked him off. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Earlier today, the president denied that hush money payments to porn stars Stormy Daniels and model Karen McDougal in the weeks leading up to the 2016 election were campaign contributions, instead calling them a simple private transaction. Trump calls Michael Cohen payouts a simple private transaction and denies that they had anything to do with campaign contributions. Now, this is a story that is not going to go away. The simple fact of the matter is it is a weaponized news story. And guess what? Take a look, and let's go back for a moment to what we were talking about in the previous segment, okay? I want you to kind of pay attention to just a couple of the things and why this is not going to go away. This is the first paragraph in this particular story. President Trump, on Monday, denied the hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal in the weeks leading up to the 2016 elections. So, for a lot of people in the political sphere, this story is about Donald Trump lying, Michael Cohen lying, campaign contributions, perhaps fiduciary malfeasance. That was deep and pretty good for so early in the day. Never mind. But listen to the story, the opening paragraph again, and this is why the story won't go away. Porn star, Stormy, Playboy model. These things are, if the phrase had been adult film actress, would it have been as salacious? This is what happens when you have a constituency that is dumbed down. Now, you are not in that church, but the overwhelming majority of people are. So what's going to come this week are further allegations in the Michael Cohen story, and as it relates to Trump, because they will do everything in their power to make certain that they craft the narrative. Now, let me give you a little bit of this background from years ago. And I'm being serious. This is about to get deep, y'all. I'm in a mood. Which, by the way, I know a bunch of folks are listening to us out there in Facebook land and Twitter as well. Do me a solid and share the program. Like the program. That's how we're growing the program. It's a very simple thing. All you have to do is hit the share or like button and let people know that we're out here. Because you know something? Most of what you're hearing on terrestrial radio and even some internet radio is just a bunch of bunk. Because they don't really know the history. They don't see what's going on in this country. I'm not saying everybody's a bad broadcaster, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. Matter of fact, I'm not even saying I'm a B+. But the reality of it is, there's a lot of stuff out there that people aren't covering because people don't understand. And it's things just like this are what the news media does very, very purposely. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Years and years ago, there was a book that supposedly predicted the end times, and it was called the Bible Code. The Bible Code was a very lame attempt for an author to try to prove that there was some kind of embedded code in the Bible that foretold the future. And what he would do is he'd take any given book or verse and highlight a word in this sentence, a word in that sentence, move over here, highlight a word in this sentence, and zigzagging down through the Gospels. And supposedly it made some revealing statement about something that was going to occur in the future. That's also done purposely in the press. If you look at this article, I want you to kind of hang tight with me here for just a second because this is why this is not going away. President Trump on Monday denied the hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal. If you look at the way the article's formatted, the very first words of President Trump, the word directly below President Trump is porn star. Right next to Stormy Daniels is Playboy. We have Stormy and Playboy. Now, I'm not saying that the author is that intuitive, but there some are out there that are quite subliminal in the way they write their pieces. And you can see that through the entire article and the way it's written. This is one of the reasons these things gain legs, because if they don't gain legs, like the how to clean your cast iron pot story, the media will force legs onto them. So what we're going to get in the coming weeks is revelations of money transactions between Trump and Michael Cohen and possible payoffs to Karen and Stormy. That story is an old story, it's a current story, and it's a future story, because it's the only story that the left has to continue to try to humiliate this president. And it has been weaponized. But more importantly than that, people know, because of the inability of a lot of Americans to hold on to a thought, an independent thought, for longer than 35 seconds, that you've got to enter in sex, drugs, and rock and roll, because that's what sells. And the competition for ears and eyes is becoming so much more competitive that the stories are getting that much more salacious. And I'm going to take it one step further. There's been a lot of accusations about the racism contained in Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving, the misogyny in Baby It's Cold Outside, etc., etc. Wait until Charlie Brown's Christmas is aired a couple times, and we're going to be hearing all kinds about Christian, insensitivities and bigotries themselves. Don't think for one moment, and I mean one moment, do not even consider for one moment that the people that are writing these articles are not doing these things intentionally. The competition is that tough out there for ears and eyes and people in the press. They will literally gin up racism and oppression and xenophobia and misogyny. A lot of big words. They will do it for $1. Are you down with this? I know it sounds like I am in a whiny, cranky mood, but it gets very difficult from somebody that respects the truth as much as I do to see this for what it really is. There's another piece of audio. I don't think I'm going to have time to get into it today. It's also another story that's continuing to take on a lifeline of its own, where we are learning even more information about the engineers at Google and the way they have realigned algorithms. And I'm starting to speak, I'm at the cusp of my experience, technologically speaking, but they have realigned algorithms to force conservative stories and results further down the search results. Yet again, another story that has its roots in the past but continues to affect us in the future. Because it's another one of those and then there's that's moments. And we see this just continually playing out almost every single day, to where, isn't it interesting that if you, and by the way, you can see these things online because a lot of these stories have comment sections under them. The Trump Cohen story is a snooze. Anybody who's got a brain realizes it's just a bunch of ginned up BS. But it's some of the most titillating and compelling stuff that's out there that's really getting the attention of the American voting public. And on and on and on and on it goes. Even Colin Kaepernick popped back up into the trending news feed over the course of the weekend. Jerome Corsi is suing Robert Mueller for leaking grand jury information. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And then, of course, there's the 8-month-old boy pushed under a hole in the U.S.-Mexico border. These are the stories that people seem to be the most compelled with these days. And they do it without the benefit of the truth. Phones are open at 929-477-3761. Let's pop over here and we'll chat things up just a bit with Clark. Good morning, Clark. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, Michael. And yourself?
Oh, just okie dokie.
Well, so, I got to thinking about the deal with Trump this morning and, Adam Schiff talking about being charged, et cetera, et cetera. And, if you stop and think about all the things they have done to get to this point, and they're doing this in plain sight to a sitting president of the United States, the FISA warrant abuse, the obvious coordination and conspiracy with intel agencies, accessing NSA databases, leaning on people so they'll give testimony, et cetera, et cetera. If they can do this to a sitting president of the United States in plain sight of everybody, what chance does a private citizen have if the government decides they want to come after them at this point?
Yeah, well, Clark, we saw this a lot, back in the Tea Party days where the IRS was weaponized. The reality is, the reality of it is, and then, what was this guy's name? He is based in Atlanta. And his name is Michael Dougherty. I need to get Michael back on the program. I might reach out to him for next Tuesday's program. But he wrote a book called Devil at Your Doorstep. And it was all about how the federal government came after his computer technology company in Atlanta and how it ruined him. He lost his house. He went bankrupt. And we see this play itself out time and time and time again. And this is another one of those things where I think that people, the average person on the street, is so naive that they just don't believe that the federal government would come after them for whatever the reason, and yet it happens all the time, and it seems to be getting worse.
Well, it is. It's horrible, and I don't want to go into details on the air, but, if you think, and, I'm talking the slightest little petty thing, and basically what you're getting down to is a disagreement with an unreasonable neighbor. And the next thing you know, you're getting a call from a U.S. attorney. Oh, just be careful about buying property that butts up next to something the federal government owns.
Yeah.
But anyway, you look at all this, and every single bit of it has been leaked. It's all over the media. The mass media is just totally complicit and putting out whatever they want put out. What have you heard about John Huber and flipping Andrew Kessler? Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. Probably that's because they're conducting an investigation the way it ought to be investigated or conducted. I wish they'd go ahead and do something. Hillary's or the Clinton Foundation's chief financial officer has flipped, and he's telling everything, and yet we haven't heard a word about that, which kind of fascinates me. But anyway,
that's something that you're kind of parlaying back to what I shared earlier today, Clark, and that is that the news media, and they all do it, they package stories that they want you to know about, and I know that people say, well, they slant them for their own agenda, and yeah, there's some truth to that, but it's deeper than that as well, because there are stories they have to make a decision. If somebody is if it's going to be a standalone thing. And let me give you some insight very quickly. I wrote the book Unknown America. It's self-published. It's something that, is an effort of my own. I have shopped it out to, a couple of the independent publishers. Maybe somebody will pick it up and really help me blow the doors off this thing because I think it's important. One of the questions that I've been asked most recently by some of these publishing houses is there going to be a second book? Well, there's going to be. I'm working on the second right now as well as a children's version of it. The reason that they ask me that is this. If they find an author that's written a book, hey, that's great. But if they find that all that's written a book that they like that's going to write a second book and maybe a third book and develop a following, that's even greater. And the reason is, here now we have somebody that's going to be a content provider who eventually will develop a following. And so when we put their second, third, or fourth book on the shelf, we can pretty much determine what that book is going to earn based upon previous earnings. And we know this guy's got to follow him for his work. So we're more likely to invest in him than this person over here that might have a bestseller, but maybe not. So we don't know that we want to take a chance on that. The media works in a very similar fashion as it comes to news stories. They will look for a news story, like the Caravan story or Donald Trump or whatever, and they will constantly repackage that story based upon its shelf life. You can have over here an investigation into Donald Trump, lying with a porn star and get mileage out of that for weeks, if not months to come. Or you can talk about an investigation, or a FISA court inquiry or whatever that might only last for a day or two and have a limited audience. And when you consider the amount of shelf space, in a technological world, it's infinite, but nonetheless, in the world of shelf space, the media is going to make a determination. Can we get miles and miles and miles of rope out of this particular story? Or are we going to send out this one-time blockbuster story that might be old news and antiquated 72 hours later? And so, and the same thing happens in a similar fashion with a lot of these conservative authors out there that seem to be such prolific writers. They'll go out, they'll write a book, Trump's great, Trump sucks, whatever the case may be, make a whole bunch of money, sales fall off of, and then they go back out, basically republish the exact same information, retitle it to something entirely different, go back out on the media tour and make a whole bunch of money. It's just a matter of constantly providing content. But these authors and the news media are in the business of providing content. They have to make certain that they're creating something that will live as long as it possibly can to maximize profitability. And for that reason, coming over here and dumping the truth out in a one-time investigation that proves exactly your point, they're not going to run with that story because they just don't have time to sell it.
Well, there's a certain amount that's accurate there. Of course, I don't know. You have to wonder if John Henley didn't pretty much nail it back in 81 or 82 whenever he did his song about the bubble-headed bleach blonde reading
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and to bring it a little closer to home, and it's a story that I hate to even bring up, look at the Natalie Holloway saga. That one news story made Greta Van Susteren's career.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and every night you had people tuning in every single night to watch what was going on with the Holloway story. So much so that now we have, Van Susteren friends with, Beth Holloway. And, we're learning who the family is and the cast of characters and all about the Vandersloots. And, it almost became a real live soap opera playing out in our living rooms every single night, and the entire country was engaged. Same thing with the OJ trial. The media is not the friend of the truth. The media is all about the profitability. Sir?
I say you're exactly right there. You go back to the OJ thing, and personally I think OJ did it. But I will say that after about a week of coverage, there was really no way you could have a fair trial. They had contaminated every jury pool in the United States to the point where nobody could be ignorant of what they'd said. And, the fact that they were doing that didn't bother them a bit. It sold advertising time. And so,
do you remember the first Gulf War? Let me tell you, let me go ahead and admit something to you real quick. The first Gulf War. Remember Peter Arnett? The Scud Stud. What was it? Arthur Kent. At the time of that, I'm living in Atlanta, and there was a little pub down the street from my house that all my friends hung out at. We'd all get off work, and we would go to the little pub, and we'd split a pitcher of beer or whatever before we went home for dinner with the wife and kids. This became a nightly ritual. And I did it for many, many, many years. But during the very first Gulf War, you got General Schwarzkopf, the whole guys over there, the reporting, Arthur Kent, and Peter Arnett, the whole 9 yards. people would go to the bars, if you remember this, people would go to the bar and every TV, and this was a sports bar, every TV would be on the war. And you'd see Peter Arnett live from a hotel they were shelling, or Arthur Kent live, trying to dodge the Scud missiles. And you'd have people at the bar, and they were ordering kamikazes and B-52s. The war was being piped in as a nightly soap opera. And the media packaged it that way. Here we have men and women dying on the field of battle. And I'll be honest with you, I was guilty of it too, because it was packaged in such a way you had live coverage of the war and coverage from what had happened earlier in that same day, people going out and literally viewing it as though it was a frickin' football game, because the media is so savvy at presenting to us what they want us to have and package it in such a way that we cannot help but look at it.
Well, I can understand it as long as they're doing it and it's a financial thing. What worries me is when it starts going against their financial interest and they keep on with whatever it is they're pursuing. I just, then I start thinking we really do have more agenda than making as much money as they possibly can. You got to wonder more about what's behind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Well,
Michael,
again. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll let you get. Somehow or another, we kind of talk over each other every now and then.
Well, that's part of the problem with being on that there internet thing, Clark, is that there's a slight delay, and when you finish and I start talking, you can't hear me talking for a couple of seconds, and then you come back on me. It's perfectly fine and perfectly acceptable. Quite frankly, it's the way Democrats and Republicans have been communicating. Not that you're a Democrat, but just kind of the crosstalk, the overtalk. It's what makes America work,
Right.
I'm kidding.
Look,
Clark, I appreciate the call so very much.
All right. You take care.
You too. Thank you so very much, Clark. All right, guys, 929-477-3761. Do want to remind you that Amazon finally got the Kindle version of the book up. Just go to theunknownamerica.com. It's not going to change your life, but it's fun to read. And somebody actually put up one of the reviews up on Amazon earlier, a couple of days ago, a week ago, whatever, that it makes for a great car travel book. And we're going to turn it into a board game as well. And just think, if you get a copy of it right now, it'll come autographed with a copy of the Constitution. And when it becomes a board game and people are playing it like Risk or Monopoly, you have an autographed copy of one of the original comma-rich editions of the book. Because I do have an incestuous relationship with a comma, and I'm working on that. But, it's just one of those character flaws that I have to deal with every day. If you are listening to the program, we would appreciate you if you're over there, Blog Talk, if you'll follow the program, getting some great listener feedback. And as also, if you're listening to us on Twitter or Facebook or Periscope, please share the program, because we're not just doing the old radio show. We're trying to offer content that's going to be informative and compelling and entertaining and maybe uplifting at times. Because, come on, talking about Mueller and probes. Well, that came out wrong. Talking about Mueller and investigations and Alexandria Cortez, all this kind of stuff, yeah, it can be a bummer. But so we're going to talk about inspirational stuff as well. Our Wednesdays are permanently dedicated to The Unknown America. It has its own individual feed, but you can find it right here on Heart of America. And then every single Friday, we're going to be doing our situational security program with a security expert. This past Friday's program with our buddy Jason as well as Tolly got a lot of Twitter traffic. A lot of folks in the security business have also been talking about the program, and so it's apparently done quite well, even only coming into its third week. So we're going to ask you to do us a favor, and when you tune into these programs, would you please share them with your family, share them with your friends, help us spread the word. I know there's a lot of talk out there. I know that it's a lot easier to listen on your car radio or whatever the case may be, but, I'm going to tell you stuff, and I'm being straight up with you. There's a lot of things that we'd like to share with you in the Conservative Talk radio universe that cannot legally be said on a terrestrial signal. And I'm not talking about profanity. I'm talking about going places that a lot of these large and even semi-large corporately managed broadcast organizations don't want their hosts saying live on the air. We are not encumbered by that reality, and that's why we are asking for people's truth. I have already had a couple people ask me about my return to a terrestrial signal, and I'll have to tell you that I would have to think about that long and hard, because even if I did return to a terrestrial tower at some point in the future, this show ain't going away, because this is the one place that I can tell you what's really on my mind without fear of backlash, because I can tell it like it, well, I guess TI is, which is why we call this program. And then there's that. Real quick break, and we're going to come back, mop this puppy up, give you some thoughts on what you can expect throughout the course of the news week. You're listening to, and then there's that, on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land. If you're a fan of the Michael Hart Show and are enjoying the daily commentary, interviews, and audio shorts, then please consider supporting the program financially. Creating a daily talk program takes a great deal of time and money. Although corporate sponsors are always welcome, the real support comes from people like you, the regular listeners. So if you support the Christian conservative message and values we share on this program and would like to help, please go to our website, michaelhartshow.com, and click on the orange Patreon button at the top of the page. For less than $7 a month, you can help us keep going while we spread our faith-based conservative views worldwide. So if you support our views, please consider supporting the program. Just go to www.michaelhartshow.com and click on the orange Patreon button, and thanks for your support and for listening.
None shall pass. What? None shall pass.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
I move for
The Michael Hart Show.
You make me sad.
Anyone can tell you the news.
We welcome Diamond and Silk.
Mark Zuckerberg gonna end up, and it's gonna be a face without the book.
Book without the face.
Hey, Megan, how are you?
Now they're chipping away at the normalization of pedophilia, and the left is embracing this type of behavior.
We welcome Dinesh D'Souza.
I know I ticked him off. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Hey, welcome back. You're listening to, and then there's that on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Basically, this upcoming week, what you're going to want to keep your eyes on is the Democratic response to the turnover in the Trump White House. Played some audio for you earlier. That is going to be the news narrative that they are going to get the most distance out of. John Kelly has stepped down as chief of staff. Presumably, the leading candidate is a Pence staffer by the name of Nick Ayers. Ayers has also announced that he is leaving at the end of the year. Now, the new Attorney General nominee is Bob Barr. Not necessarily thrilled about that. Barr has a long career and actually has previously been confirmed by Democrats. His last federal confirmation, he pulled 100% of the Democrats. That's not necessarily why I am against him. Bob Barr, however, is somewhat of a judicial retread. Another nomination that I'm a little ambivalent about is that of Heather Nauert, as UN ambassador. But it's not so much the appointments of, or the nominations of Barr and Nauert that are going to be the trending news. It's going to be the way the left deals with what is happening as it relates to Nick Ayers and John Kelly, and, of course, the future of Nikki Haley. My prognostication is that the media is going to position this as though nobody can work with Trump. That has become such a narrative that you've got people within the Trump administration, at least former associates, that are now writing. You know, you guys are well aware of the fact that Cliff Sims has a book coming out, Team of Vipers, or Viper Team, or I used to drive a Viper. I don't remember. It's got Viper in it somewhere. Former Trump staffer who supposedly now has got a tell-all. Believe me, there'll be other comments and commentary made about that tell-all when the book is actually released. I believe it's in January. It is profitable to trash Trump. And so that's what we've got in this book. But that is the way the media is moving forward. So they have got to really and truly, in the coming weeks, make this to steal the term, cult of personalities that are turning on the President of the United States. And they will use as proof positive the departure of so many of these staffers and the fact that even Pence is turning people over. I think it's very important to note that, number one, anywhere in the White House on a daily basis is a real pressure cooker. Number two, and a lot of people need to realize that a lot of these folks that take these positions, they might be former military. They might also be a politician of a lower office or an attorney, or perhaps they are a former intern or whatever. They will oftentimes take these jobs to have these jobs on their resume. Nobody enters in, unless you're like, the White House chef, nobody enters into the service of the administration on a confirmed process, a nomination process. I'm not referring to the Supreme Court because that's a whole different branch of government. But very few people will take on a job at the administration and go the distance. They come in, they serve, they make their mark, they get the T-shirt, they get to place that on their political resume, and they go off and be a lobbyist or whatever it is that they be. So this is not even remotely, not only is it not even remotely not unusual, it's the norm. Earlier today, we even played a little piece of audio for you from a guy by the name of Ned Ryan. I am not going to play the entire audio again, but I do want to give you just a few moments of it because this is Ryan, who is a political strategist, pointing out the fact that this is going to be used and ginned up as some kind of political football and a good portion of that will come this week because the revelations that Ayers is leaving was from just a couple of days ago, and the nomination of Barr and Nauert was from last week. If you think the left-leaning press ain't going to let this go anytime soon, you're crazy. And here's what Ned Ryan had to say about it.
The thing that's interesting, again, the media wants to make every little change in the Trump White House, out to be the apocalypse. And the fact of the matter is that in every administration and every White House, there's staff turnover. I mean, as we're talking about the chief of staff position, Carly, Obama had 3 chiefs of staff in his first 3 years, so there's nothing unusual about John Kelly leaving. In fact, he made it to about the right mark. Most senior White House staff last 12 to 18 months, and by the time he's done, John Kelly will have been there 18 months. I think he's done an admirable job. Let's not forget in the summer of 2017 that while there's always a certain amount of chaos in the White House, it seemed like it was right on the edges of just being a little out of control. So he's done a very good job, and I think it's a great time. Let's not forget, when we go into 2019, Democrats are going to unleash a massive amount of investigations. There's going to be a lot going on, bring in new blood, bring in fresh energy. So I'm excited. I've seen Mark Meadows' name mentioned as a potential chief of staff.
So that's Ned Ryan pointing out the fact, again, that this is quite usual, but he also makes an interesting observation that when you've got everybody seated, and in the case of Alexandria Cortez inaugurated for the House of Representatives, that you are going to see this unleashing. You think that how much fun we had with Maxine Waters and Congressman Green and the Schumers of the world and Pelosi and people screaming about impeachment. Man, that was child's play compared to what's coming up. And it's interesting that Ryan makes the observation that perhaps the Trump administration is also girding up with new blood for the purpose of I don't think it's going to be a retaliation, but some form of defensive posture, if you will, because of what's going to come next. And just like we see national news stories that seem to take on a life of their own, whether it be the tragedy of Natalie Holloway or O.J. or the Peterson murder trials or whatever the case may be, the story du jour now is get Trump. Kind of, think get Shorty. In this case, he's a bigger guy, refer to the movie, but it's all a matter of get Trump. Get you some. Get you some Trump. I mean, there's going to be a TV program about this, and he'll probably produce it. But that's what the news stories are all about this upcoming week. We will continue to also to monitor the caravan story. Got some interesting guests lined up throughout the upcoming broadcast week on the various podcast feeds. But the things I want you to keep an eye on this particular week is the caravan, is what's going to go on with Trump. Not so much the Michael Cohen story. Michael Cohen's a liar, and he is proving himself to be Avenatti light and really not a whole lot more than that. So the story for Trump is going to be related to the turnover in the White House and the continuation of posturing or portraying him as a porn star lover, and then, of course, the caravan on top of that, because we are getting closer and closer and closer to what? The holiday season, obviously. Folks out there doing a lot of their shopping. They're starting to lose interest in the news cycle. They're spending time online, but they're doing that over on Amazon. And the only people that are really spending their entire evenings watching 9 hours of Fox News are your grandmother and grandfather, because they have nothing better to do. So as we get a little further down the line, one of two things is going to happen. One will be that the news cycle will quiet down. But also it's going to depend upon how vested any given news media outlet is in a story, to where it might even become even more salacious as the news media outlets continue to combat and fight for more ears and eyes. So those are the three big news stories that you're going to want to keep an eye on this upcoming week. Trump, as well as what happens with Cohen and the caravan, because these are undoubtedly some of the most emotional out there. The Alexandria Cortez stories, will, and similar ones like that, they'll begin to lose a little bit of their luster because, people are finally getting to the point, yeah, she's a whack job. We get that. But unfortunately, here in America, we're stuck with her, at least for the next couple of years, till hopefully those people in the fine but misguided state of New York finally do come to their senses and oust her. So keep an eye on that. Of course, we've also got discussions within the state of Alabama as it relates to Doug Jones. Locally, for those of you that might be here in the state of Alabama, keep an eye on the protester story as it relates to the River Chase Galleria. This particular story, at this point, although it's been covered nationally, it has yet to take on a national intrigue when the information is finally released, and we don't even know if it ever really will be in its entirety. If it is released and we have confirmation of what we think we already know, that could be your next big breaking news story. So keep an eye on that as well. If you're in the southeastern United States or in the state of Alabama, in coming weeks, the news story coming out of the E.J. Bradford story as it relates to the River Chase Galleria, particularly Christmas season, is going to be the big local story of the day. Do want to remind you also that tomorrow we'll be doing the regular Michael Hart Show. The schedule is, and then there's that, on Mondays, which is basically just our recap of the previous week. A few thoughts on what the coming week holds for you. A little bit different than the Michael Hart Show that can pretty much go anywhere at any time. Wednesday, Unknown America, where for an hour we will just tell you a lot of things you did not know about this country. You can listen to that program right here, or you can actually go over to theunknownamerica.com and listen to the live player for the upcoming broadcast is where you can also pick up a copy of the book. And on the Unknown America podcast, it's not just going to be me reading snippets from the book. It's a lot of new stuff that's not contained in the book, things you thought you knew, things that didn't really happen in this country, the way things really work in this country. So the podcast is going to allow me to go deeper into the narrative than the book and its finite abilities, of a book allows me to do. Thursdays, we return to the Michael Hart Show format where we take your calls. And then Friday, we offer up for you and your safety the Situational Security Podcast. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about how not to get killed in crossfire. This past week was ways to keep kids safe in school. That will be an online, a upcoming theme as well. Also, we talked about keeping kids safe online this upcoming Friday. Our tentative scheduled goal is going to be talking about ways to prevent being hurt in the case of workplace violence. Would love to have your thoughts about what we're going to do on Situational Security Fridays. That particular program already sparked a lot of interest from a lot of people, that in the Unknown America, because these are the things that really do impact your life, not just the news cycle of the day, but things that you can go out and talk to your friends about, your family about. You can witness the gospel, but you can also witness history and you can witness safety and security. So we will continue that format. But if you have any suggestions, drop me an email, michael@heartofamerica.net. It's H-A-R-T, michael@heartofamerica.net. Please put the A in front of the E in Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, michael@heartofamerica.net. Also, there is several copies of the book left in stock. We still have time to get them out to you if you want them in time for Christmas. But today is the day to order, because after this, we're going to be taking the discounts down for the remaining portion of the year. The discounts will remain up this week, but after that, we're going to pull down the buy them in bulk offer and several others. And again, if you want a Kindle version of it, you can get that there as well. One last thing, when you're listening to the program, really and truly, if you'll do us a favor and share it with your family and friends as we continue to spread the word of this program and everything we're trying to do at the Heart of America Broadcasting Network and everything that it encompasses. That's it for us. We're going to check out of here just a few minutes early today. Again, check us out at heartofamerica.net, theunknownamerica.com, and send your emails to Michael at heartofamerica.net. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 8 with the Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye now.